this energy of the creative process is almost like it's not ours, and our responsibility to fine tune our instrument to allow that being, that energy of what the creative idea is, find us and then to move through us. And yet it doesn't come from us, but it's our responsibility to create the hollow bone to allow it to start to pass through. Now, when that creative idea presents itself, it kind of like drops in from somewhere greater, somewhere non-physical. And then there's like a circle. It drops in, and then 50% of the circle is the creation of the thing. So turning the grief into grace, or turning the grief into art, or turning the joy into art, whatever it is. It doesn't matter where the emotion is coming from, but it's more so the creation of it.
And now, do you need an essence of play to be creative? Or can you be creative without play? And here we are on the Creative Path podcast.
I'm so excited to be here.
I am so excited. This is the only way that I could get, Deja Blue is blown up, so I'm not actually welcome back. I'm too small of a guest.
Hold on, we've just taken a pause.
And so I'm just so excited because you are one of my favorite people to have actually in-depth conversations with. Blue of Earth. Charlotte, recalling into yourself, 362436. If you look it up at ChatGPT, that's like one of the first things that comes up about you. I'm just calling it out.
I'm new to this, but I love that you took notes before I arrived, even though we've known each other for many years. Mm-hmm. And one of the main facts you pulled from the internet is apparently my body ratio is 362436, which apparently is the perfect hourglass, which I'm not mad about.
Only if you're 5'3", according to Sir Mix-a-Lot.
Well, I'm 5'9", so you just Sir Mix-a-Lot probably knew a thing or two and maybe didn't. And then if you just stretch me out, we're still here in the perfect ratio, my darling, just 5'9".
If I stretch you out.
Yeah, because you said 5'3" is like the perfect for that.
Sir Mix-a-Lot said that. I don't know. I think you're perfect. I think you're perfect, Blue.
We're in Hollywood. I don't trust Sir
This is LA. We're the city of angels and plastic surgery and pretending to be what you're not. And so what we're here to do today is explore creativity, because we are creating who we desire to be in each and every moment. And you are someone who inspires me deeply with your creativity. That's something that I think when we first met, you said about me, and has now become a full toroidal. I feel very inspired by what you are up to and what you do in the world. And so thank you for joining me on this podcast.
I'm so excited. I couldn't think of a better title of the podcast, the creative path, like to be able to unpack and just go into conversation with you and just ultimately have a catch up, even though the cameras are here. It's just you, me, and the dogs just having a catch up.
Yeah. And the thing is that the creative path, the reason why I titled it that is because I actually see creativity as a path for our evolution. Mm-hmm. I see it as a modality for our growth. I see it as, in my opinion, actually the most effective, sustainable, and efficient one. And in large part because of the fact that it is fun. Mm-hmm. Creativity is fun. Mm-hmm. And you have embodied play for me in my life as someone I can look to and think to myself, okay, how can I play more? Every time I think of you, I think, how can I play more? And I would love to start right there with your relationship to play and your relationship to play as creativity, or how that all weaves together.
Well, first and foremost, I had a very blessed upbringing in the sense that my father never lost touch with how to play. And as a child, I grew up with two parents that made children's toys as a living. So basically, my mum and dad were Mr. and Mrs. Claus. And every Christmas, they would have to work overtime because they were manufacturing toys to be shipped around the world for their push for Christmas. And so it literally felt like my father was Santa Claus. And he never lost his connection with his playfulness. Everything was an instrument. We'd be in the car and he's drumming on the dashboard and singing. And just that was a really healthy example of an adult that never lost touch with their innocence and their magic and their genius. And there is a quote, I don't know exactly who it's by, but it's the creative adult is the child that survived. And I feel like my dad's child survived, and it showed me and created the fertile soil for me to keep playing as a child and to not get to a certain age and then be like, you've now got to grow up, get your head out the clouds. I mean, I've definitely had that projected on me my entire life, and I still do to this day. However, from my father specifically, play was encouraged constantly. And even just when it was Christmas, they would go the extra mile to make it extremely magical. They would put like talcum powder, like baby powder on the bottom of a boot and tread it through the house. And you'd like wake up the next day. And now looking at it, it's kind of creepy that a man was walking through the house at night. But like, there's a child. I was like, Santa's been! And oh my goodness. And it was just like, it kept that magic essence alive for me. I was probably one of the last children in school that actually stopped believing in Santa. I think I was like 15, and I got in a fight with someone about it. They were like, Santa's not real, get over it. And I'm like, you don't know. I have met him. I went to the North Pole with my dad. True story. Went to a hut in the middle of the forest. There was reindeers outside. There were elves everywhere. And I met Santa Claus. So I was convinced. And I just thought everyone had lost their damn mind. And I knew that Santa was real. Now that's kind of played out into my adult life. And obviously not Santa Claus, but more so seeing the mundane as an incredible blank canvas to play with. And that comes down to like making my bed. Like I really genuinely, in my head, when I make my bed in the morning, I am in a TV show and I have to, this is a real thing. And I am being judged by a panel of judges, like Dancing with the Stars, but bed making competition. And I'm judged on my speed and my accuracy. And I'm in competition with a Swedish couple who are like type A. They're like really good and they're really fast. And you press a buzzer and then you start getting timed. And I am running around the room like squealing and panic and like making the bed in this formation. Then when I'm done, I press the invisible buzzer and then I get the verdict from the panel.
Every morning?
I would say at least once a week.
Okay.
It's like when I'm like ready to hype myself up for the day and I have this most amazing, immaculate made bed and my heart rate is through the roof and I'm squealing with excitement. And then I'm like, yeah, I won, let's go. And then I go brush my teeth. Now, if you were a fly on the wall, you could think that I'm completely insane. However, there's another quote who I don't know said this original quote, but it was that the universe doesn't give you what you want. The universe gives you who you are. And in that moment, I took a very mundane experience of making my bed into a game. And I played and I squealed and I yelled and I had fun. And my heart rate is up and I'm blasting that play frequency out into the cosmos or into the future moment and recognizing the future version of ourselves is being created in who we are right now. And the amount of access to play that I have is creating who I'm going to become for the rest of the day. And I see it like that, genuinely see it as an investment into my future self. And so when in a passing moment of washing the dishes, I could be listening to the Bee Gees and like having like shaking them hips and like washing those dishes. The dishes need to be washed regardless. Or I could be overthinking and creating suffering and being in some sort of future or past experience in my mind and kind of brushing myself over the present moment. And so life is predominantly made up of mundane moments. It's not the highlight reel on Instagram. It is not the achievements that we create. It's the behind the scenes, no one's watching, making the bed, brushing the teeth, getting changed, cleaning the room moments that if they are implemented with a little bit more play, it creates a magical essence of life and it completely raises your magnetism so that when you do show up for a podcast or for some kind of experience or a job, there's a magnetism and there's a radiance that no one will understand the context of, but has genuinely been invested into through the art of play.
And how do you define play? Like how would someone, so I can put on music and shimmy while I do the dishes. Am I playing just by the nature of the fact that I'm shimmying? Or is there something beyond that you use to define actually the energetic of play and what that means?
That's a great question. I don't think I've been asked that question before.
Well, welcome back to my podcast, Blue.
You got to come around here for some really original questions and understanding the layers of what it means to be a creative adult. I would say play for me is the capacity in which my imagination is willing to go. And so I say that in the sense of the example of me making my bed in the morning. My imagination is going so far out that I'm in a TV show, and I've created all of these details around it that I'm competing with this Swedish couple. Where the fuck did the Swedish couple come from? I don't know. The crevices of my imagination. However, because the universe is constantly responding to the feeling, the energy, I can only create as far as my imagination is willing to go. And so imagination is directly linked with the play in physical form. So when I allow my imagination to go fully out there and I anchor in the feeling as if it's actually so, I turn a mundane thing like making the bed into a play moment because my imagination has overlapped with my 3D reality. Mm-hmm. So the dancing and cleaning, washing the dishes, I would say that my imagination, that I'm allowing myself to get into this lightheartedness in seemingly something so 2D, that's for me the essence of play. So it's not necessarily an action, it's more so the energy. It's like who are you being while you do it, as opposed to what you're actually doing.
And now, do you need an essence of play to be creative, or can you be creative without play?
Oh, for sure. You can totally be creative without play.
Okay. And so what is the interplay between those things for you? Do you find that when because you are someone who is an artist, you are a very talented artist and creative, and the essence of play, does that get lost at times for you? Is your entry point to creativity for you personally play?
No, not always. My signature in this life, if you know anything about astrology, I'm guided by the planet of Jupiter. It's a lot of like play and bubbliness and lightheartedness, and that is my essence. It just always has been since I was a kid. However, a lot of my creativity comes from grief. Like, I've lost touch with my play. I went through a really gnarly heartbreak not too long ago, and I got so disconnected with my essence. I got so disconnected with my joy. It would be a miracle if I made it from the bed to the fridge without having like a sob sesh on the floor, just like breaking down. However, my poetry and my paintings and my writing, it was so much richer because it was so much closer to the grief and the alchemical process for the artist to alchemize grief into something beautiful is my favorite thing about art, is that I can make art from joy. However, actually, sometimes it's even more potent when I make art from grief because it's reminding me that there's still something beautiful inside of me, even when I can't see it in that moment. Mm-hmm. So I create from the human experience, HUE, many different colors of the human experience is where I create from. But some of my most potent creatings have come from grief.
And so for me, I often talk about the creative process is one of discovery. So when stepping into a poem, for example, I never know how it's going to end. Mm-hmm. I never know. And I'm discovering it along the way, as if I often think of it as we are the surrogates to birth creative babies through us. Mm-hmm. And that consciousness of that poem or that song or that painting is searching for someone who's willing to go through the incubation period and the gestation period of what it would take to birth that to the world. Mm-hmm. And some of them are going to require years of gestation. Some of them may come through in an instant. But what is consistent for all of that is that I must continue to show up as a willing participant in that process. Mm-hmm. And maybe there's a period of several weeks where I need to go deep into research about something. When I've done, for example, poems that are more about sort of the pandemic or these sorts of things, I'm going into deep research mode. When I'm going into a breakup piece of poetry, I actually know that while I'm working on it, what'll happen is I'll write one line and then I'll just cry for 20 minutes and then literally not know where it's going. But then I will write another line and then another line and then another line. And then I'll get to a point where the emotion dries up. Mm. And I went, thank you for the ceremony that those 4 lines just were for me. And then I know when I sit down again, that next section, wherever that goes, will be its own little mini ceremony. And I don't know where it's going to be. And so the process of actually creating is a process of discovery. And to your point, it's a process of alchemizing. It's a process of moving energy that I think is so valuable. And it can become a trap. It can become a place where we are artistically masturbating to our own grief. You know what I mean? And it can stop serving. And so out of curiosity for you, how do you relate to going so deep into all of the human emotions, but specifically grief, with your artistry without getting lost or pulled too deep into it where it's now keeping you in that frequency?
Great question. I would say that for me, the way that I see the creative process, and what you said, and Elizabeth Gilbert talks about this in the book Big Magic, how this energy of the creative process is almost like it's not ours, and our responsibility is to fine tune our instrument to allow that energy of what the creative idea is to find us and then to move through us. And yet it doesn't come from us, but it's our responsibility to create the hollow bone to allow it to start to pass through. Now, when that creative idea presents itself, it kind of like drops in from somewhere greater, somewhere non-physical. And then there's like a circle, and it drops in, and then 50% of the circle is the creation of the thing. So turning the grief into grace, or turning the grief into art, or turning the joy into art, whatever it is, it doesn't matter where the emotion is coming from, but it's more so the creation of it. And then if it's not shared, the energy has to go somewhere, and it turns back in on itself. So it starts to kind of like eat you from the inside out. It's like this anxiety. It's like trapped creative potential. Mm-hmm. And so if it's just festering in like I'm creating, but never sharing it, never giving an outlet, it's only 50% of the creative cycle. The sharing of it, the standing on stage and delivering that spoken word that just like really touches someone that's also going through a very similar texture of where you wrote that poem from, or alleviates some sort of story that they've been running because of the lyrics you chose in a moment of grief. You sharing it allows the process to be complete, so that then it comes back to its full beginning original place where the inspiration dropped in, and now there's room for more creativity to come in. When we get so full of the creative process, but we're festering in that place of not sharing it, it's not the completion, and it creates stagnant energy, and it starts to kind of eat itself. I find.
So do you think that, so I agree with one part of the premise, which is that I think there's a whole different growth that happens in the sharing. You have to face off with a whole different, so writing it, every time I sit down to write a poem, I go, I can't do that. I don't know how to write a poem. Every single time.
And yeah, if you've heard Adam's poems, they're unbelievable.
And so legitimately I go, I've used up all my juice. I don't think I can do this. I don't, like, where is this even going? I'm not good at this. No one's going to care about this. And I face off with that every time, every single poem that I sit down to write. And the growth comes from facing off with that, choosing my creativity, choosing to continue to listen, choosing to dance with the muse, and override that voice in my head telling me I can't. There's growth every single time. And there's a different type of growth available in the sharing. And suddenly my art is worth sharing. My voice is worth being heard. I am willing to risk. I'm so in love with what I've created that I'm willing to risk being humiliated in order to share it. I am now seeing a selfless aspect of maybe this could help you. And that's why I want to put it out there. And so I've always said that I write my art for me. And once I release it, it's yours. Mm-hmm. And so I agree that there is something special to the sharing, but I've never heard it said that the sharing is a necessary part of the process. And so do you think are there any exceptions to people who actually just create in the silence of their own world? Is there another way that they fulfill that process if they're not sharing it with others?
I feel like it's not one size fits all when it comes to the creative process. And that's why I love the creative process, because there are no rules and there is no right or wrong way of doing it. And there's no good art or bad art. And that's why I love making art personally. For me, and I can only ever really speak on behalf of myself or my own experience, when something is created and it just kind of goes into a drawer and never gets seen again, it loses the power of that it was never mine in the first place. And I made it mine all of a sudden. Like it was like, mine, I'm going to keep this and it's never going to...
You're hoarding it.
I'm hoarding it. It's my precious. I'm going to put it in the drawer. No one's ever going to see it. It was never mine to start with before it dropped in. And it was moving through me. And the identification with the process can create like it's my baby. It's like a possessiveness over this creative process, when actually, even if it's just shared with a lover in a passing moment, when you're sitting at the park bench and it's like, I wrote this poem and it's really vulnerable for me to share this with you. However, it's part of my creative process to allow myself to recognize it's not about me. It's for me, but it's not about me. And it's allowing it to move through. And me sharing this with you right now is freeing me from the bondage I've created to my own art. That's medicine. There's so much power in that. So instead of saying that it's not a good way to just to create art and keep it to yourself, just an inquiry. What would it mean to you to get so uncomfortable to share it? What would that mean for your process to allow yourself to be the hollow bone, to not become so full of your own art, then it creates a stagnancy and then a block in the creative process?
I think there's a lot of ways to do that, in meaning, this is why I think I shared with you the format of the Create community now, where everyone gets a creative prompt and kind of a process to go through. And then at the end of the month, they can upload the art they created to an online gallery that the community can see.
Oh,
right? And so it's because of that. I really do believe, just like you're saying, that sharing the art is an integral part of it. It's woven into it, but it can be done in ways where not everyone who writes a poem has to even be the one that stands on stage to read it. But what would it look like to just print it out and like paste it somewhere out in the world, just on a street sign somewhere, knowing someone might see it, or leave it as on a restaurant table for the next person who sits down at it, or anonymously post it out into the world under an Instagram account that doesn't have your face on it. There's so many ways to do it, but I think that there's a self-validation that's an important part, because being an artist, for me at least, is a very vulnerable act. Creating art is... I believe our creative energy is the purest expression of our soul. And so art is the tangible expression of our creative energy. And therefore, art is the expression of our soul into form. And to do that, put your soul on display, is one of the most vulnerable things that you can possibly do. And I think that just the self-validation aspect of saying, this is worth being seen, is saying my soul is worth being seen, my effort is worth being seen, my tears are worth being seen, is one of the most, I talk about an act of self-love. I don't know that there is more loving of an act that we can give to ourselves.
It is such an act of self-love, and it is such a crazy journey of metamorphosis, of continuing to blow our own mind. And the only person that I want to impress on my journey of creativity is my 5-year-old self. That's it. Like, I just want to check in with her every single morning and just be like, hey, did I lose my way? Did I forget what was important to you? Did I stop making skits or dressing up or making songs or having my girlfriends over and doing choreographed dances to some band? Like, because for me, I think that there's so much genius that lies within that part of ourselves, and yet we've become so disconnected because we're being projected onto us what success is from some external source of somebody else's map of consciousness. And I think that life stops having as much rich meaning when I have lost connection with what my 5-year-old self has been saying to me this whole time. And so I've placed a photo of my 5-year-old self on my altar. And every morning I just ask her, like, are you proud? Are you stoked with who I've become today? Or who I am now in this chapter of my life? And sometimes she's got some really solid feedback. And she's like, yo, hold on. And there's other times she's just so happy and beams back at me with a massive smile. And it's like, wow, you're still really magic. And you're doing it. And doing things more than I could have ever created for my life or ever had imagined for my human experience. But she's really the only person I'm trying to impress with any of my art. And it's such a reassuring feeling when I check back in with her. And so just honoring the vulnerability of what it means to be an artist and honoring the vulnerability of the creative process and the rawness of it, and simultaneously the liberation that sits side by side with that vulnerability as well.
Beautifully said. And so, Lily,
is she great?
She's great.
Look at her. We've got both the babes.
We got both of our dogs here right now, which is so happy because they're best friends.
They are best friends.
They're best friends
for a while.
So, I have so many places to go. We still have lots of time, which is great. I want to return and kind of close a loop on play, because I have some wounding around play in the sense of spending a lot of my life thinking I wasn't a playful person, and being in a relationship dynamic where I was seen as the serious one, and in many ways took on a role that was being projected on me. And then once that relationship was over, suddenly everyone was going, you're actually way more playful than I realized you were. And realizing that we can take on identity, and that's from other people, from our parents, from whatever, or just even self-assigned, because that's may be how we've been or how we've been raised. And I think about also our nature, gene keys or astrology or different things. And I think about, okay, if I'm washing dishes, Blue is dancing around, maybe even pretending that she's on American Idol, singing and being judged against some Swedish people who have followed her from her bed making competition. And so
I can't escape those Swedes.
No, this is housekeeping Olympics. There's multiple events happening. And so, that's the way that you may choose to spend your time while washing dishes. What's interesting is most of the time, I think back to when I wash dishes, I am listening to podcasts. I am listening to an audiobook. I'm working through something in my mind. I use a lot of my space like that to fill up sort of my mental capacities, right? And to me, there's a fulfillment in that. I'm a hyper intellectual, and I love getting into learning. I just love to learn so much. And I recognize that, at least to some degree, I separate the two between play and kind of this hyper intellectual, because for me, play is not intellectual. It can be playful to play maybe a game that requires our emotion, but play to me is a feeling. It's more of a feeling of how I'm doing something and approaching something, and there is no result attached. My definition of play requires that there's no need for the result to be a certain way. You're doing it for the enjoyment of doing it. And I'm curious, do you have that other side to you as well that needs to be nourished in that way? Or what is your response to hearing someone like me almost in somewhat of a judgment of going, I want to play more, but I also kind of by nature love to spend the dish dancing time learning hyper intellectual things on podcasts?
Well, I'm definitely not playing all the time. And I absolutely love to use, like, for example, driving over to this podcast for this podcast today, I was in the car and I was listening to a pretty serious book, and it was like really fascinating for me, and it's like exercising different parts of my brain. And so my dog's just wandering around. distracting me. Sorry. And
We can call her over if you want her on your lap.
Come here. What are you doing?
As long as she's not peeing, she's fine.
Huh? Yeah, I know. I was like just tracking her. Okay, we're good. We got pee before. And I think that with the gene keys also there's an archetype which is the shadow of over seriousness, the gift of delight, and the siddhi, the enlightened aspect of ecstasy. And so it's one that has been classed as somebody that is over serious and got caught up in that frequency. It's on the same bandwidth as delight and ecstasy. So actually you're a natural ecstatic, and just may have got caught up in some narrative that has created a serious sense of you, but it's not who you are. I've never seen you to be that as your default, as your core. It's more so that there's just been things that may have been picked up in the past that had created this over seriousness. However, you're by nature delight and ecstasy. And so how can one set a new narrative with how you're speaking towards yourself, that actually I'm a natural ecstatic. And sometimes I can get pulled into seriousness, and it's not who I am, and it's not the way that I create my identity. And simultaneously, I love a serious podcast, or I love self-development, or I love to read Gabor Mate's books and learn a little bit more about what trauma does to the body. Like, this is important stuff, and it's really helpful to exercise all different aspects of our being. But I think that we're multifaceted, multidimensional humans that are here to be able to play with many different archetypes in our being, not just the eternal child. The eternal child is one of 64 facets that we can be, based off of the I Ching of the 64 codons in our DNA, which is also the 64 archetypes that are available to us. So we can be the eternal child, we can be the wisdom keeper, we can be the artist, the creator, the seductress, the student, the teacher, the lover, the muse. I mean, there's so many different facets. What I'm in the inquiry of is how exercised do I have access to each facet to be that which is needed. And sometimes that which is needed is seriousness.
Is that a goal that you have, to develop as many of the 64 as you possibly can?
100%. Mm-hmm. Yeah. Like, whenever I find myself contracted by something, I see that as an opportunity where my power lies within that space. Like, my power is leaking toward that part of me that feels contraction and goes almost in a stiff mode. So like in the past, it could have been my capacity to play. Oh my gosh, I'm around people that play all the time. It makes me feel uncomfortable. Okay, well, can you get curious enough to why that's making you feel uncomfortable and where you're not actually free in that area? Because if you're curious enough to take ownership of the trigger and to actually say, oh, my power lies in that area, maybe I want to actually explore that. I'm going to put myself in situations that's going to encourage me to play more. I'm going to receive my own power from that area. How can I actually recognize that I'm a multifaceted, multidimensional being that actually wants to have access to all these different archetypes within me? And so for me recently, it was around, maybe about a year ago, it was around being around people that were super sexually liberated. And I just was faced off with all of my conditioning around sexuality and around my own liberation in that area. I felt stiff and uncomfortable with somebody that's so fluid and playful.
And 36, 24, 36.
Yeah,
in it
I mean,
everywhere.
I got those ratios. I should be working in my favor, but like I ain't maximizing on that. And so I just decided to put myself in really uncomfortable situations to liberate myself in that area. So what's so delicious for me is freedom to be that which is needed beyond some sort of preconceived notion of who I'm supposed to be. So instead of saying, well, I'm just supposed to be the playful one, well, sometimes I'm the sad one. Sometimes I'm the quiet one. Sometimes I'm the hermit. Sometimes I'm the playful one. But when there is a time to play, when there is a dance floor, when there is the music playing and it's moving my body, I have full liberation because I've given myself the key to the freedom of my own play, so that when it's available and the energy's calling for it, I go all in.
Yeah. And that's something we have in common, which is, for me, if I find a contraction, like, all right, what is it? Let's go. Is it, I feel not sexually liberated. I feel the contraction being around people who seem to be. All right, I'm saying yes to the play party invite. Mm-hmm. Let's go. Let's just see what that is. And I think that that aspect is so serving to what the creative process is, because what we're talking about is creating ourselves into who we desire to be. And similarly, what I've found for myself to be true around creating art is that the best art lies at the edge of our consciousness, meaning whatever the edge of our human experience, the edge of our capacity for what we can hold, the edge of what we understand and know to be true at the time, the best art lies at that edge. And so as an artist, when I can actually expand my edges, and I don't want to say beyond anyone else because it's not a comparison, but the further that I can expand it, the edges of the art that I can create at the edges of my consciousness, a lot of people have never even ventured to those areas. And so when they experience the art, they're now given a reference point, a nodal frequency of where they could go or what they could touch on. And ideally, it's inspiring that action. And one of the things about your art that it has such a distinct frequency of devotion and spirituality, a connection to God, source, spirit, that really rings through all of your art, the tarot deck that is coming, all of these things. That to me is so palpable in what you create. And so I know that it's a part of how you live. It is just wrapped into the consciousness that is blue. Can you speak to your relationship between creativity and spirituality, your spiritual connection, and how those weave?
First and foremost, I just want to acknowledge, because it's something that you said that just really highlighted something around the creative process for both of us, which is your capacity to feel the uncomfortable and go head on into it. And it reminds me of something that that I read about bison. And how, did you see that?
They face the storm.
So when there's a snowstorm that comes, instead of running away from the storm, they know that if they face it as a herd, they will get through the storm faster. Even though it's uncomfortable in the moment, they get out on the other side of the weather, as opposed to sort of running away from it and then being caught in it for a much longer process. And that's something that you and I both have, and it's a consistent theme that I feel here with this process, is the creative process, is that when we feel uncomfortable, when we feel the trigger, when we feel that thing that comes up inside of us that tries to blame the outside world as to why we feel what it is that we feel, we send that finger back inwards and we sit with it and we face it like the bison face the storm. And I think that is a huge part of the creative process, to liberate and unleash, is going, oh, I feel nervous to sing in front of people. I'm going to put myself in a position where I'm going to go sing in front of people. That's something that you and I have both done consistently in our own paths that have led to finding the goal to blow our own minds. And ultimately, then it just subsequently blows somebody else's mind because they're listening to the poem or you standing on stage and delivering this message that really hits them in their heart. It's because you face the discomfort head on like the bison with the snowstorm. So I just wanted to acknowledge that in you.
Thank you.
And around the spirituality and how spirituality and art sort of merge as one, it's an acknowledgement that it doesn't come from me. And so it's tending to the garden of the channel. And for me in the morning when I'm burning my frankincense, I'm cleansing myself. I do a Sanskrit prayer over every part of where energy enters or information enters and exits from the body. And I do a blessing over my third eye, over my crown, over my belly button, over my throat, over my mouth. Like I do these Sanskrit blessings specifically to cleanse where the information is coming in and coming out from, so that I'm doing my part to tune my instrument. The music that comes through is also a connection with something greater. But I can tell you, before any painting, before I sit down, similar to what you shared about your poem, I'm nervous about this. I don't know if I'm going to be able to create anything good. Like there comes my mind, Blue's mind, that creates all the stories as why I'm not an artist and how I'm a fraud. And like, what are you doing? No one's interested in what you're about to draw. Where's it even going to go? And it's just a blank canvas. So it's just me and all the stories I'm going to project onto that canvas. Now, the difference is I don't let the stories stop me from creating. I feel it. I feel my heart pound. I feel like it's going to be some sort of shit show on here. And then eventually I start creating, and then I blow my own mind. And then I tell myself, actually, I can do it. I can create. And it creates this momentum. So the more I invest into the process, the more the muscle inside of me that says I can and replaces the story I can't. Now, none of us were born perfectionists, not perfectionists, perfect at being an artist. None of us were born like crushing the handpan. None of us were born knowing how to play the harp. You have to be okay with not being good to get good. And sometimes we get so hung up on the perfectionism of needing it to be perfect that we don't even create in the first place. And so can we allow it to just be the process, not the goal, to be process orientated, not goal orientated, and just to allow, I don't even know where this painting is going to go. It doesn't matter. It's the fact that I'm just sitting down and creating. And so for me in the morning, my devotional practice is to carve out the hollow bone every single day as a relationship with that energy that is the creative process that is not mine, but wants to move through me, to be a clear vessel that says, hey, I'm open, willing, and ready to receive. I do not know that I do not know, but I open my vessel up for the highest frequency of the creative process to move through, to blow my own mind and subsequently create medicine for others. Now that's a spell in itself. That's a prayer. That's a conversation with the universe that I'm doing every single morning, so that then when I sit in front of the canvas or the easel, I'm in a dance with God.
I love that. It's something where I have found for myself to be, I do it before I get on stage. Every time before I get on stage to deliver, I actually open up intentionally to be a channel and a vessel for God's spirit to speak through me. It's never I can't wait to deliver my thing. It's, I surrender even the idea of what I think I'm going to say, and I trust that it will be perfect in the moment. And
how do you prep for that?
How do I prep for being on stage?
Yeah, for trusting the medicine of the moment.
So that is my part in the relationship. Yeah. So for me, similar to you, right? When you sit down in front of the easel, I imagine you're in a dance with God and you're allowing whatever to come through, but you've put in the hours as an artist, drawing as a child, sketchbooks, doodles, all of it. Similarly for me, a lot of people don't even know, I trained professionally as an actor, almost conservatory style, for a decade of my life. I hired private acting coaches. I did professional theater. I made my own short films and directed music videos. I read countless books on screenwriting and how to write story. I read, I don't even know how many acting books to understand the process of conveying emotion, tapping into it organically, authentically. So all of that now becomes the foundation upon which I can actually rest without consciously having to think about it. And where I think other people get messed up is they don't have the foundation they trust in, but they want to be able to surrender into trust. But like the act of surrender is an active act of saying, I trust in blank. And what does it take to surrender? You have to trust in something. And so to surrender your life to God is to trust God to catch you when you leap. To surrender my experience to the moment of whatever wants to come through when I'm on stage is to trust myself to actually know that I've got what it takes to be up there, go completely blank, completely forget my lines, not know what I'm going to say, and have it wind up being amazing, because that's happened so many times. The number of times I mess up my lines and go into my head and go, I don't even know what to say. And I just take a breath and I watch and I trust I forgot my lines at the perfect moment for that thing to land for the person who needed an extra second. I trust that I forgot my lines so that I can take that extra moment, recenter because I was not delivering it from a frequency that it needed to be. And now I'm going to be a little self-conscious when I come out of the poem. And that's probably needed for the next point in this. But ultimately, I have the preparation. And so for you, even what I'm hearing, the way I'm receiving this is that every morning, what you are doing is additional preparation so that you can show up in the surrender throughout the day.
It's really helpful to hear that, because I asked you that because that trust, like you said, that trust muscle is not something that just is a switch that is just turned on. I think that it takes a lifetime up to this point to learn to trust oneself.
100%.
And that is something that we don't see. That's the stuff that goes on behind the scenes of, I've seen your actors reel, and I've seen your journey over a good chunk of time, like almost like a decade or something.
Yeah, we've probably known each other for like at least 8-9 years.
So, and it's been such a stunning arc, because that trust that you're talking about when you do stand on stage and you're detecting, okay, what's the energy in the space and what is that which is needed right now? Well, that tool belt that you're leaning on is cultivated over 2 decades of devotion to strengthening these tools. So it reminds me of like Gaia, for example. Gaia reached out and have asked me to give a talk in Colorado on their live event.
Amazing.
And they asked for me to do to give a presentation, like a PowerPoint thing. And everything in me was like, it reminds me of the TED Talk when they were like, you need slides. And I'm like, oh no, because that means I have to remember something. And it comes from a completely different part of my brain. I speak from my heart intuitively in the moment of that which is needed. Now, that journey to get to that point means that I've got to radically trust in front of so many people. You can hear a pin drop in the space and they're just waiting on the next word that's going to come out of my mouth. And I don't know what it's going to be either. And so there's got to be so much trust in that there is like a stream that is about to come through that will leave me with my mind blown. But to trust that in front of that many people and there's that much at stake takes every fiber and ounce of my being that is cultivated over an entire lifetime, if not many lifetimes. And that is the stuff behind the scenes. That's the devotional practice. That's the standing on stage, not knowing what to say, trusting, and it not working out. And then learning, okay, there are different ways and there's different tools that I can pull on in this position, because I've learned from it not working out. And so there's also, I don't believe in failure, but I do believe in lessons. And I think that from doing it over and over and over again and being burnt and for not doing it well and thinking that absolutely sucked and delivering a talk where a couple of people just trying to clap really slowly and you're like, oh dear, I bombed it. It was awful. That's all part of the process. I think it's just the willingness to do it regardless, and the willingness to be humiliated, and the willingness to be projected on, and the willingness to be judged. Not that anybody wants that, but I think it's also part of the sharing process. It's this part of the trust process. And I know that you have had a public platform and been very vulnerable in the nature of your content, like the things that you've shared around your relationships, your sexuality, like possessions. I mean, there's all sorts of things that you have shared. It's like the most core vulnerable stuff. And yet simultaneously, you keep doing it even when you've been judged and ostracized. And so I'd be curious just to hear from you, for my own personal benefit, from somebody that walks a very similar path. How do you navigate the sensitivity of the creative process, the nature of the vulnerability, and the desire to keep showing up?
It's for me about also being radically honest with the wave that I'm in, because there's different waves, there's different chapters, and recognizing that if I'm completely honest, most of what I am creating is setting a new floor that I can't fall below anymore. So like imagine rock climbing and they hammer in whatever that's called and they hook themselves in so they can't fall beyond that anymore. And then they start climbing again and they do another one every however many feet. But each one of those hooks now holds a nodal point. They say, I can't go below this anymore. And so for me, my art is like that. So at a time, you're referring to The Art of Choosing Love, which is my YouTube reality show I made after my 10-year relationship ended. And I basically put a camera on the most vulnerable moments of what it looked like to heal from that breakup, which is still currently on YouTube, although every day I think about deleting it. So
Really? You do?
I don't know. We can talk about that at a different time, but I just, it's an interesting thing because at that time, the reason why I actually had to do that was because my deep karmic wound of feeling like there was something wrong with me, because I had been sexually abused at the age of 5. It was a repressed memory that stayed repressed for 25 years. So I knew, I had a feeling something's off in me. There's something wrong, quote unquote, with me. I just don't know what it is. And that was validated. It was true. I found it eventually, but that just because I found it didn't change the ingrained belief now that there was something inherently wrong with me. And so that art, that show was me basically saying to the world, here's all of me. Here's literally the most vulnerable. This is me ugly crying all over the world. This is me looking like 40-year-old virgin. I don't know what I'm doing with women. This is just insane. And it's embarrassing in some ways. But if I'm willing to just put all of me on display, kind of like 8 Mile and Eminem at the end when he just says all his own shit first.
And I'm this, then I'm that,
then
then
I'm
I did
that.
this.
I'm going, then if I can do that and be accepted for it, if I can be willing to be more vulnerable than anyone else I know and put myself on display and help people through that, there's nothing left. I'm naked metaphorically in front of the entire world here. And so what's hiding? What could be wrong with me? Nothing. What else is there? And so it was a need for me to know that at the deepest, most vulnerable aspects of myself, I would be willing to put that on display to prove to myself that there's nothing to be ashamed of. And that became a new baseline. And I will never fall behind that. I now walk through the world knowing something that I ask people hypothetically. If there was a camera on you 24/7, would you be proud of what the world saw? Because you can ask my team that I had with me. I said, the more awkward, the more uncomfortable, the more sad, the more vulnerable the moment, put a camera on it. That's what I want filmed. I will never tell you not to film. We may not air it. That we'll decide as a team, but I will never tell you not to film. And I needed that. And so I think that for me, to your point, like, how do I relate to it? I relate to, how can my art call me forward? What is the thing at the edge of what I'm working through that if I lean into that, my art now becomes my best friend, my cheerleader, my reflection, my mirror, my resistance. My art is the path. The creative path is the path to my liberation. Mm-hmm. And so it's various times, at different times, I will share or I won't share depending on what I'm working on.
It just takes a lot of courage, Like, I feel like we live in a sea of, we're looking over Los Angeles right now. Like, we have this incredible view of the city of angels, also simultaneously one of the greatest imprints on brainwashing around the entire world through the media outlets that is produced from this city, And I feel like it's called the City of Angels for a reason. There's like an onslaught of incredible angels here that I have met. And I'm like, wow. Just sensational, life-changing humans. And simultaneously, it's a sea of illusion and masks. And it's just a sea of filters and scripts and saying a narrative just to continue to feed the drama that's inside the part of us that just loves to feed off of that drama and division. And to be somebody as an artist, to put a camera on you when you're in the most vulnerable, when you you don't know what up and down is, it feels like the waves have been hitting you back to back to back, and you're just kind of just grasping for air, and to be witnessed in that, and not only be witnessed in that, be witnessing it long after the moment has passed, years later, as you're now in a completely different phase of your life, still those moments to be witnessed. It just takes an immense amount of courage. And simultaneously, it is a pattern interrupt that I think that the world needs, is for us to be more real with each other, because it's not our highlight reels that connect us. It's our suffering. It's our heartbreak. It's our, I don't know what I'm doing with my life, and I'm living at my mum's house and I'm in my 40s. It's those moments that go, you know what? I can relate to that. I can relate to the midlife crisis. I can relate to the fact that your relationship's actually seemingly beautiful on paper, but actually is going through some challenging moments because there's lost the eros in the connection. Like, it's the vulnerability that it takes to share from that place that actually creates a golden thread that connects all of us. And yet it takes somebody to be courageous enough to go, you know what? Film the uncomfortable, film the crunchy. And I just want to acknowledge that. And also it's really helpful for me to hear the courage that it takes behind the scenes to allow yourself to be witnessed in those ways. And simultaneously, I think that's why a lot of people really resonate with your content and really appreciate what it is that you share, because they can see themselves in what it is that you share. They can feel themselves when they hear your poems, because it's real. And I think that that's the most important ally that an artist can ever have, is authenticity.
I really appreciate that. I received that. And I think that the last point I'll make to it is that's why I pray. That's why I take care of my physical body. That's why I eat well. That's why I surround myself with amazing humans. That's why when I can't sleep or I wake up super early, I sit in front of the fire and I journal and I read and I move my body. I do all this because it does take a lot. It does take a lot. And so how do we show up to that? What is it? You want to be a professional athlete? It's going to take a lot. There's certain requirements. You want to be an artist that actually is willing to share vulnerably with the world some of your most sensitive moments in life. It's going to require something to meet that. And the moment that more eyes are on that, it also shifts. It's one thing to share to the 100 people that might catch it. It's another thing to share and know that hundreds of thousands, if not millions of people are going to see that. And for you, you've had some, I mean, your last year probably of social media has really taken off. Your podcast, Deja Blue Podcast, you had a very public relationship. I've seen your social media and public profile really explode over probably the last 1-ish, 2-ish years. And I'm curious how that impacts your art. I'm curious how that impacts your relationship to your output of creativity or even the creative process.
I absolutely love my online community, the people that are on my Instagram and through the podcast, because I have magnetized like-minded, heart-centered, genuinely kind, super supportive, all in people that have come to this online space. And so of course there's the exception here and there, but like I would say for the most part, it's just stunning audience. And then it got to one point where I was exposed for a relationship. I was in a relationship, and I received an audience that was not my usual audience. And they came in by the masses, and they were angry and not kind and judgmental, and picked me apart for every single little bit of my being and my appearance and just everything. And I found myself not wanting to share anymore online. I didn't want to be seen. And it took me some time to like go back to my cave and lick my wounds and create some self-reassurance. And also in astrology, if you know anything about astrology, a square, so my Scorpio and my Leo are squared each other, meaning that there's a part of me, the Leo, which is like, I'm just going to share everything and do all the things and dance and sing and share the world and love it, because I love it. And then there's the Scorpio in me, which is the hermit and the isolation, and it's like, nobody look at me, and I'm deep into the magic realms of my internal waters and the subconscious mind. And they're square, meaning that they fight against each other. So I will oscillate between, hello, everybody. I feel whole and complete. And I've got so much joy bubbling through me that I don't want to not share with you the songs that I'm singing and the art that I'm creating. And that's the phase that I'm in right now. I'm like fully like feeling so enthusiastic about life that my cup is overfloweth and I'm very active in sharing online. And then there's just a time where I can feel it in my internal waters shift. And all of a sudden I'll go quiet for a while. And usually when that happened in the podcast, I take a pause. And the pauses are usually some sort of heartbreak that I've gone through that I just can't bring myself to create content, or something has shifted in my external reality, which has just asked me to go inwards. However, for me, it's just really about listening and not obstructing what is most alive. And again, that comes back to the sentence of that which is needed. Online, I have been blasted to be this witch. A blue of earth is a witch. Like, I don't actually necessarily fully resonate with that archetype. I do believe that I am that which is needed, and that requires a deep level of listening. And I think a huge part of my journey has been to no longer fully hear with my ears, but to listen with my being. And so the creative process is a deep journey of listening, of what it is that's actually most alive for me, and not creating. And this is what's just happened with the podcast is I built this really successful thing, and I have like 4 million listeners right now, and it's like, you know, full steam ahead. But my internal waters are like asking me to be an artist again, asking me to come back to creating art and not be as available for feedback 24/7 for the most vulnerable parts of my soul, just this part of my journey. So it was closing out season 3 and putting a cap on it right now and spending every single waking moment in the art studio making art, which no one will see for an entire year. This deck is not going to be out in the world for one more year. So, and it's not that instant gratification. It's not that constant feedback. It's a cultivation of a richness over an extended period of time, 9 months. It takes 9 months to create a baby and to birth it into the world. Same thing with this creative project. And it's teaching me ways of the long game and not the instant gratification monkey constantly being fed. And so this is the time in the season for me in my life. And I get projected on, and I have people say awful things. And I mean, it would just probably be 2% of what actually is reflected back. And simultaneously, artists are sensitive beings. And I have friends that are artists on massive scale. We're talking about like, they're reaching billions of people, and they're so sensitive and such a delicate soul. Where they get their inspiration from, for all of us artists, where we get our inspiration from is such a sensitive process. It's a death, purification, rebirth, integration, and again, and again, and again. And we pull our art from that place. And then to stand for these people on these stages and have hundreds of thousands of people in one concert projecting their psyche onto that sensitive being that is expressing their creativity. It's such a dance, and there needs to be protective mechanisms of cleansing after being that exposed, of having a ritual that resets us back into our own energy, because otherwise our psyche can start to feel like a beehive. It's like noise and busyness and projections, and the bigger the audience, the more projections, the wider the audience, the more haters, and also the more super fans. However, it's so important to recognize the shamanic space is existing at all times, meaning that if there's somebody in Japan right now sitting in front of a photo of you, sending you negative thoughts or negative energy, that's black magic. And that's
I see you, Hiroshi.
Huh?
I said, I see you, Hiroshi.
Yeah.
I'm coming for you.
Yeah, we know what you're doing.
We know what you're doing. I'm telling your mom.
It's black magic, and it's like it's going to affect your psyche. And you see, there's a thing called the 27 Club, or like people like big artists that have killed themselves around the age of 27. It's because like we haven't been given the guidance or the tools of how does such a sensitive being that then is catapulted into the masses protect their energy so that they don't have to turn to drugs to numb themselves from feeling all of that.
So what is speak to that person now? Because there's probably some people listening to this who are that. They are that sensitive little creature who just wants to share their soul artistically with the world. And they may be on a path where there's lots of people who are going to see it, or they may just be even more fearful of their parents seeing it or their schoolmates or whatever. And so, what is your advice to them? Is there a practice that you would want them to do? Is there a way that you'd want them to move through the world? How speak to that sensitive soul?
I mean, I can speak to it in the sense I've been it. I've shared on my platform. It's upset my family big time. And ultimately it came down to the question of, do I live a life that is not in alignment, integrity, or my dharma to appease somebody else's comfort zone? Or do I ruffle feathers and make people uncomfortable but never neglect myself? And that's a question. There's no right or wrong answer. There's no right or wrong path. However, for me personally, there was no way I could live my life on this planet and neglect myself over and over and over again and ask myself on my deathbed, what if? Or have regret. So I had to face everything that meant my choice was going to trigger in other people. And it was a lot. It triggered a lot of people. And, but I can say now that I can rest at night and be like, I'm real to my soul. I'm being genuine. I'm being authentic, and I've earned it. And the world's responding to it now, where things are coming to me, opportunities are coming to me, because I'm home in my own dharma, what I'm here to do. And so it creates a magnetic field for anybody that is being authentic. And also simultaneously some practical tools around standing on stage, for example, and delivering a talk in front of 1,000 people or 2,000 people. Afterwards, I do a ritual where I cleanse myself of any projections, distortions, or any energy that's not vibrationally mine to be cleansed off of me. And it's usually a ritual bath. And I sit in front of the bath and I pray into the water and I sing into the water, and I put some Epsom salts, and if I've got some laurel leaves or dried rose petals, and I say a prayer into the water that is a baptism, that anything that is not mine, that is not serving me, and that is projected from somebody else's map of consciousness or psyche onto me during this experience, may it be washed away in the water. And then I get into the water and I use the leaves and I scrub my body. And the hotter the water, the better, to really also sweat out. And on the other side of that, it's immediate reset for me. And the thing with the body of water is it's programmable to your intention. So if I'm singing or I'm praying into the water, I usually use my arms and I do like a figure of 8 pattern while I'm praying into the water. What it does is it programs the water, and it programs it to a certain frequency that creates it to be a ritual bath as opposed to just a body of water that I ran and jumped in. It takes 2 minutes and it changes the entire game of like whether it's a regular bath or it's a ritual bath. Mm-hmm. And it all comes down to intention. So there's some practical tools that can help with the exposure of a sensitive soul. Smudging after any experience. I just been to Egypt and I came back with some frankincense from Egypt, and we were in Egypt together. And I like to burn the frankincense in the morning, and I have some feathers that I work with that do a smudge and a cleanse, and I also make a frankincense offering into the different directions as an opening of the day, and also a cleansing of my physical body, mentally, spiritually, physically, sexually, financially, multidimensionally, across all planes of existence. Say a prayer of protection, but it comes down to intention, and I think just exposing ourselves as such a sensitive being and not having any kind of protection, ritual cleansing, reset is what can feed into what we see with a lot of artists, is that they go into drugs to numb and to distract away from the noise that's being created because of all the projections from everybody around the world that can create a negative internal narrative that's not even your own anymore, but is very convincing that it's your own, to the point where we need to numb ourselves out, and that's a rocky path. And so I don't think that's talked about really very often is protection rituals or ways of just being able to call our energy back to ourselves once we've exposed ourselves in such a vulnerable way.
Well, thank you for laying it down practically. Mm-hmm. I took a lot away from that. I'm going to move away from, after I get off stage, which is usually cocaine and hookers. So I'm going to stop that. It doesn't seem like that I'm doing it right.
I'm slippery slope, my bro.
I'm not doing it right. Okay, this is a strip club money bath. No, I think for me, the thing that I'll add, you touched on, which is just intention. So you can't get the ritual wrong. If you're listening to this, don't get caught of like, what's the actual arm movements or the mudras that I need or the toning. It's not about that. It's set the intention. The water will hold your intention. The smudging of whatever, if you don't have sage or Palo Santo, like maybe it's one of your favorite colognes, honestly, and just spraying that into the air with the intention that it land on you and hold a frequency that you now desire, calling you back to yourself. And every night I'm at my altar and I'm clearing my energy before I go to bed into the dream space and taking on all these projections. And I can do a better job about doing it before certain things, like actually putting up the shields and the protections and the different before even like entering into the social media world, for example. That's its own thing, and dealing with that. And so thank you for giving some very practical for people, and really I hope everyone takes away from this the power of intention. The last question that I want to ask you as we kind of land the plane here is, do you have any specifics to when you are most creative? Do you have rituals that you get into that activate your creativity? Do you have anything that is consistent in your life where you go, I know if I do this, creativity is going to flow. I am in my optimal creative artistry.
I've really been in a dance with how unpredictable the creative process is. And I don't know if it's just a simple formula for me of like, well, if I do this, then this will come. However, for the tarot, for example, it's a 9-month project. It's 78 original pieces of artwork. It's a book of prayers and descriptions. It's astrology and the gene keys. It is a massive project. It takes me 2 days. I'm working with Lily Ashwell. She's working on it with me. It takes 2 days to create one card, just the artwork for it. And 2 days, I'm talking about 8 a.m. to 8 p.m. for 2 days straight for one piece of art. That's not even the description. That is not even the prayers. That's not even the book. So this is a massive project and it's requiring a full devotion. And when I went into it, every part of me that was the instant gratification, every part of me that was in distraction, every part of me that just wanted to create something super quick and then move on to the next thing, put its heels in the ground and was like, I was fighting the longevity and the patience that this project was asking of me. And so for me, it was about, okay, I need to set up a ceremony space for me to go into this birthing process. Like there needs to be some intention around this. So it was clearing up my schedule. It was saying no to 99% of requests that were coming in. It was no longer being available for the social gatherings and only giving myself one social gathering a month max, and cutting down the fat of anything that was not that process for me. Then I reactivated my 40 days of devotion to like bring and start the new year from my attention and my intention. The greatest spiritual currency that we have is our attention, to start refining it again and bringing it home from all of the different areas where I was being distracted. Then I did an opening ceremony where I opened up an altar for the tarot and like you said, right at the beginning of this podcast, but I did it for the 9-month journey of whatever arises within me. I evoked the spirit of the tarot into my being so that I will become the archetypes as I draw them. And so these things have become partnered to now this birthing process that the space has been set. And I am in. I'm eating, sleeping, drinking, thinking, breathing tarot at the moment. And I'm loving the process. All the resistance is gone. I know that I'm going to get in the studio. I'm going to be in. I want to be there all the time. And it's such a beautiful place to be, because at the beginning I was fighting it. I was resisting it. I was thinking, this isn't for me. I don't think I can do this. And I had to face every part of my being that said I was not capable of creating something like this. Mm-hmm. And it was also every part of my being that had been flaky or that wasn't available, or is like said I would do something and didn't do it. And I had to face off with all those parts of myself, and they had to start to die in the wake of this project. And so from the grand scale of things, now I can say when I show up to the studio, I'm in and I'm making art. And I tell you, Lily, has never seen this version of me. I don't think hardly anyone's seen this version of me, where I'm in and I'm like churning out art, and I'm just for months on end. And she's completely mind blown, but simultaneously I'm blowing my own mind. I think that's really what it's all about. So yes, I have built the container to allow this process to be birthed through, and it wasn't easy, and it didn't just happen because I decided it to. It was required to show up even when I didn't feel like it, to the point where it became a certain rhythm that now I'm in, and there's no stopping me.
Yeah, we earn our art.
Yeah.
And so I really appreciate you sharing that. This has been such a cool conversation to have with you. And I know there's going to be so many people that are getting just such great tidbits from here. And the way that you bridge your devotional practices into what you create is really inspiring. Thank you for letting us into your world a little bit. I'm so excited for the tarot deck when it comes out.
I can't wait to hand that to you, by the way. It's going to be like a proposal. I'm going to get on one knee and look dead in the eye and be like, Adam, this is taking blood, sweat, and tears. And now I deliver you the final product.
Yeah, I mean, the piece that we didn't touch on that I do want to mention to people is what we have, which is community is everything. Friendship is everything. The people, I mean, you have at various stages in my journey, for example, when I was making that show in particular and was really carrying a lot, there was one moment in particular where I came over and you basically said, I left, and you called me and said, hey, you need to come back. You need to come back. There's some cleansing that has to happen. And you showed up for me really powerfully. And I remember that. And I also remember when you told me I didn't make the bed when I left, and you were upset about it. And like the ways in which we hold each other, because now I'm aware that no matter what the rest of the world thinks, I have the support of a community for the sensitive little boy in me that just wants to share his poems. And so thank you for being a part of my support system and my confidence and my angel on my shoulder, and just inspiring me along the way. I love you so much. Is there anything that hasn't been said that feels alive for you that you want to leave people with?
Firstly, I would like to say that I'm going to call bullshit on the story that you may have that you're not an artist. I believe that every single person, and I'm talking to the audience here, not you. I know you're an artist, and you know you're an artist. But I believe that every single person has a physical body to create something and turn a non-physical thing into a physical thing. So whether you are making a beautiful piece of, or a beautiful dish of food, and you drizzling it with the balsamic glaze over the top, and then you just a little bit of salt, and the way that you decorate the plate as an art, as a ritual, to the way that you make your bed in the morning, to the way that you build an altar, or when you go and get flowers from the grocery store and you cut the stems off and you position them in a beautiful way and then put them into a vase. That is art. And how can art and life become one? How can life become an expression of your art, and your art be an expression of your life? And that there is no separate things anymore. And how can we see something like the mundane of making a bed actually become an origami expression of a beautiful bed made tight, and the pillows done in a way that is you look at it and you feel expansion in your heart? How can putting your clothes away become an art to the point where you do them on the hanger, so that the hangers are all the same hangers and there's like a beautiful space between them and it's in color order? That's art. And I think that we are all artists on the other side of the story. I cannot, or I am not. And that's what I call bullshit on. And so for anybody listening or watching this episode, I just would love for you to get curious enough to ask yourself, where does my art lie? And even if you were just to say, and you start your day first thing in the morning that just says, I open myself up to that which I do not know, but I have always been. I open myself to the artist within me to blow my own mind and to impress my 5-year-old self. Let's see what unfolds today, but I'm open to the magic of life becoming art. That in itself, even if you don't know, is a powerful prayer and a powerful spell. And so I want to invite others into that. And the second part of this would be just to say thank you to you. And thank you for having me on your podcast and multiple times now. In addition to that, thank you for being such a good friend and for loving me in the seasons of being present and then me being off and doing my art and just always holding the love with an open palm. And I've always felt that from you, where whether we see each other every week or we don't see each other for 2 years or a year, the love doesn't change. It remains the same. And in the same breath, I always know that you're running parallel with me with finding your edges and turning it into something beautiful. And so thank you for all of the art that you've created, the spoken word poetry that I got the blessing of receiving in Egypt in one of the Great Pyramids, and delivering this poetry that just left people weeping. You have a way of articulating yourself and articulating what is the depth of your process into something so beautiful that runs off of your tongue and touches people in ways that they didn't know that they needed. And your artistry is making this world a better place. And so thank you for utilizing all of your platforms to create liberation for others. It's such a blessing to witness your journey, and I love you very much.
I love you too. Thank you so much. Let people know how they can follow you, find you, and what you're up to.
So I am very active, almost a little bit too active on Instagram. And you can find me Blue of Earth, BLU of Earth. On Instagram. My website is Blue of Earth, BLU of Earth.com. And you can sign up for my newsletter, which is more so like just extracts of my journal, which I send out every week. I also host community calls now that the podcast has come to an end of season 3. We're taking a pause. However, you can just stay tuned in with the community calls that are happening through the newsletter. And I am also the founder and the Mama of Fluorescence, which is a modern mystery school for women. We host ceremonies and facilitate online programs and trainings. I do that with Reggie Riverbear, who is my co-founder, and she's epic human. And then currently I'm making a tarot deck right now, as I've spoken into, and that'll be available next year. Well,
everybody, I highly encourage that you follow and just take in the magic that is Blue, all 36, 24, 36 of her. Come on, call back, full circle. Thank you.
Please don't Google me, because apparently this is what happens.
Thank you for all the kind words. I love you so much. And to everyone who has listened, all of this is in the show notes. And thank you for going on this journey into creativity and walking the creative path with us. A reminder that always and always you are seen, you are heard, and you are loved.
Thank you so much for watching this video. I really appreciate you taking the time. If you are interested in building a life that you love through the 3 pillars of relationship, business, and creativity, then I encourage you to continue checking out more of my content, including this video, which I really think that you will like. Would you believe me if I told you that you can make $1 million as a coach with a very small social media following? I know that this is possible because I did it. I was paid $1 million for a 1-year one-on-one coaching contract, and I had less than 5,000 Instagram followers. My name is Adam Roa. I have been a personal development, quote-unquote life coach since 2013, and within 18 months of launching my personal coaching business, I was earning a consistent 6 figures, and that ballooned to 7 figures and beyond, all because I understand that you need 3 things in order to build a successful, and by successful I mean a lucrative, revenue-generating coaching business.